Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Scott Luton and special guest host Allison Krejci-Giddens with you here today on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Allison, how are we doing?
I'm good. I'm excited about today.
We are excited today. We've already laughed a good bit on the pre-show. I think we have a lively, passionate, and highly professional guest here today and leader that's going to be sharing some of her insights. A leader on the move, I'll say, within the global supply chain community. So we're all geeked up, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm pumped.
Oh, wonderful. And a little quick aside, we're going to have Donna Krejci join us and share some of her travel adventures as she went to Europe here recently,
I know,
right?
right? Seriously. I mean, everybody has fun. I'm back here working and,
we got to get a slideshow. We got to get a slideshow from Donna.
That'd be good. That'd be good with commentary.
That's right. One of our favorite people. Okay. Well, let's dive right into today's show and also one of our newest favorite people. I want to welcome in LeAnne Richards, Supply Chain Integration with a major consumer packaged goods company. LeAnne, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy to be here.
It is so great to have you. We've been exchanging emails for quite some time as we've been prepping for today. And it's really neat to finally meet you in person, enjoy the pre-show conversation. And now, Allison, we get to spotlight her journey with all of our global listeners. So it's going to be fun, right?
Absolutely. It's good timing for this because she's got some experience.
Yes. And she also let out a little secret pre-show. I'm not sure if I want to share, because Allison and I are both big fans of the 2021 World Series champs, Atlanta Braves. And we found out perhaps that LeAnne grew up as a New York Mets fan. But
we can't start, man. I mean, that really just, the poor listeners now have this expectation set, or I hope they haven't shut off the podcast at this point.
I hope not either, LeAnne. But hey, you know what? We have plenty of friends that are Mets fans and fellow supply chain geeks that are Mets fans. So you're in good company. It's all, okay. Hey, life's too short to throw elbows too often at your sports rivals. But hey, great to have you here regardless. So speaking of, LeAnne, of where you grew up and how you grew up and what that was like, where did you grow up? Tell us about that.
So I grew up in New York. I actually grew up in the Bronx, New York. I'm the youngest of 4 daughters.
Okay.
Grew up very meager lifestyle. My mom was a single mom. Pretty much our family mantra was God first, family second, education next. And that's how we grew up and that's how we moved forward. And, that's how we lived our life pretty much.
So I love that. By the way, it values come to mind, discipline, habits, priorities, all of that. So when you think of that and you think of your weekly activities, what are some things that come to mind of a week in the life of LeAnne Richards as a child?
Yeah, what's funny? We had cousins all around and everything. And my cousins would always say, we're always at the park and y'all are always at the library, So, I mean, my mother was serious about the education thing. It kept us occupied. My 2 older sisters, they're 18 months apart. And they both went to, great schools in upstate New York. One of them went to Syracuse, one of them went to Cornell. Then there's a 7-year gap. And my sister that's 15 months older than me, we went to school in Florida. We both went to Florida A&M. So that's how we became Southern girls. And what's funny is now we all live in Georgia. We all live in Cobb County. We all live in the same general area. And it's like, one of us came and then we followed the other. And my last sister was like, why am I still in New York? I could be living, down here with a totally different lifestyle. So,
I love it.
I feel like we really, what was ingrained in us as young people God first, family second, education, next. Like we've really like taken that to heart, and that's our life.
I love it. And I bet y'all get together all the time here since you're all in the same county
Yep.
in Georgia. Now
Yep.
tell us, you're talking about all those gaggle of cousins you grew up with, and I can relate. I've got a great, and I love my gaggle of cousins on both sides of the family. That was a blessing for me growing up and still today. Do you see all of your kids play and have those relationships too?
So, my sister and their kids, like my daughter's cousins, yes, they're like brothers and sisters. My daughter's the only child. One of my sisters has one daughter, and they're like sisters. Like you can't tell them that, they're not. What I have found though that's kind of unfortunate, I think it's just how life is and how life evolves.
Right.
Is my cousins like that I grew up with, our kids are not close, because of distance, because of, a lot of them are still in New York or have moved to other areas, and we're down here. We try to get together, but it's just not the same. One thing I noticed, and a lot of people notice this in their families, probably, I think it was like 2000, my grandmother died. And that's kind of when you see, the matriarch and then, the cousins kind of split off a little bit. We don't get together as much. So,
it's tough.
But I do appreciate the fact that my daughter can grow up with her cousins, and I think they'll have that relationship like forever. I don't see them growing apart, especially because life is different now with technology.
Right.
And,
So much so. All right.
And that's so cool. That's so cool that you get to be right around the corner, basically, from your sisters too.
Oh yeah.
And I've got a sister, and she's local, and I can't imagine her not being local.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's very cool.
I moved
really
away
cool.
from Georgia for 5 years, and I didn't realize that like the little things were like Easter. Like you don't think like, oh, we're gonna get together Easter, but I was like, what are we gonna do? We're all alone. Or like birthday parties. You used to have the whole family over for a birthday party, and it's like, it wasn't the same. So
Right.
I've been back for a while, and I'm happy to be back, and
Good. Well, we're lucky to have you back. That's for sure. So I know you went to Florida for a few years, and then you came back to Georgia. Talk us through some of your professional history and that journey coming back or coming to Georgia in the first place, and then a little bit about prior to your current role and things that shaped you.
So what I would say, Shani, I had an unconventional first job right out of college. I worked for Amoco Oil Company, and I worked in operations. So operations meant that I was running their C-stores, their convenience stores. I was opening stores, managing them, doing the whole gamut. So I remember one time my mother said, you went to college for all these years to work at a gas station? But it was probably the best experience I could have had, because it was almost like owning my own business on somebody else's dime. So I was responsible for the P&L. I was responsible for marketing. I was responsible for hiring, firing, so I got to experience so much and also enhance my customer service skills. And I don't care what role you're in, what job you're in, what function you do, you have to have customer service skills. Like you always have a customer. It may be an external customer, it may be an internal customer, but you have to know how to take care of your customer. So I actually moved from Florida to Georgia with Amoco. They transferred me here. And then that's how I ended up in Georgia.
Hey, LeAnne, what part of Florida were you in?
I was in Tallahassee.
Oh, Tallahassee.
Yep, FAMU, Tallahassee. So
home of Florida State University, right?
Yep, Florida State, and Florida A&M is right across the railroad tracks from Florida State.
Really? Okay. And A&M,
Yep.
That's the Rattlers, is that right?
The Rattlers, you got it.
Okay. All right. All right. So you moved up, and Alice, we're going to talk sports throughout. It's just kind of what we do, right?
Sorry, LeAnne, I should have warned you.
And we haven't talked food yet. And
we talk food.
We'll talk food in a little bit. I want to hear about something, a dish from the Bronx. But hey, so you moved to Georgia and to where you are now in Cobb County?
Yeah. Well, I've lived different parts of Cobb County, but I lived more in the South Cobb area when I first came here.
Okay. So tell us about what brought you here, and we'll continue that professional journey.
Okay. So came here, transferred with Amico, came here, worked for them for probably 2 more years or so. And then I left there, went to Georgia State, got my master's at Georgia State in management with a concentration in organizational development.
Okay.
So I thought that I was going to go into the HR world and, make people feel good. While I was
Hang on a sec. The HR world to make people feel good. Are you referring to kind of the psychology aspect of those roles?
Yeah, you're the feel good person. You make people feel comfortable.
Well, yes, you kind of have to be the adult in the room. Oftentimes,
Exactly.
That's a good
I
way
would
of putting it.
assume, right? Okay.
Sometimes.
So you chose not to do that. So what did you choose to do?
I actually did an internship at Philips Consumer Electronics, which was over in the perimeter area in Atlanta. And I ended up staying there. I stayed there for about 3 years, and that's when I got into supply chain. They even asked me, "Don't you want to go into sales? Don't you want to go into HR?" And the way they had their business structured, supply chain was the best place to learn about the business. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to really understand kind of how things work and how things connected. And I got into supply chain. It was called an account management type of position, and moved into some demand planning roles. And I really, I think, grew in the demand planning arena. So stayed there for a few years, and then I went over to my current company, where I have been for, this will be 17 years.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's
yeah.
awesome. So when you started at your current company, are you doing what you're doing now, or how did that kind of evolution look like, and where'd you spend your time?
Oh man, I've had so many experiences that have really shaped me to end up where I am now. I started here in our Atlanta office working more as an account rep, so doing a lot of order fulfillment, customer type of relations with some of our drug customers. I did that for about probably 2 years. Then I moved to Bentonville, Arkansas. I was there for 3 years and got back into demand planning. Then I moved to Schaumburg, Illinois for about 2 years, got deeper into demand planning. I think some of my first roles, it was more just kind of putting numbers in the system, so to speak. And then when I got into some of those later roles, I had the opportunity to be more strategic, work closer with our customer development team, understand the ebbs and flows more of the business, what was expected from their customers in terms of promotions or the time of the year when we would see a spike in the business,
right.
Things like that, and really got more connected with the system.
Right.
So it's been about. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So if I could interject for our listeners, a little bit of context, and Allison's going to ask you about what you're up to now.
Okay.
But listeners, we, sometimes we got to be careful, especially with really big companies. LeAnne is not the spokesperson for her company, but for context, and I can't wait to hear about what she's up to now. She is with a global brand that 999 people out of 1,000 would recognize, and probably the same have used a product today from this company. So I think that's helpful context as LeAnne kind of walks us through her 17 years with this company and what she's doing now. So you were going to say something else, LeAnne or Allison? Maybe we ask about what she's up to today.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. I'm in my head, I'm looking at a map and I'm like, okay, Bentonville and then Schaumburg, and then and I'm sitting like, your sisters are waiting. They're back in Georgia. What are you doing? So after Illinois, where'd you head? Did you come back here? And I'm excited to hear too about what you're doing now and kind of how the pandemic has really enhanced what you're doing.
I came back here after Illinois, and I will say that was probably, being in Illinois is probably one of the best experiences for me. I didn't think I could take the cold again because I had been away from the cold for so long. I was like, I can't do that. But, you know, I got a big coat and it worked out good. And you want to talk about food, like Chicago is a food city.
Oh yeah,
Like,
good call.
I could have ate there for like probably 2 more years and not repeated anything that I ate.
Greg White says Chicago is the culinary capital of the
Yes.
states. I dispute that a bit. I think of New Orleans. I think of how eclectic, frankly, how eclectic Atlanta is, especially Buford Highway, one of our favorite places. That's where we lived for 6 years, right around the corner from Buford Highway. I think of Charleston. I think of all the places in Florida, San Francisco. See, I go down this, we mentioned food. We go down this whole interstate of, but anyway, we'll keep driving. So Chicago.
I agree with you on all of those too. I just haven't spent time in San Francisco, but all of those East Coast, South, I'd have to agree with you on all of those.
Oh man, let's take a trip. Let's just hit them all. Right. All right. So, when did you get to here in the Atlanta area with your current company?
So I came back here in 2014, and the role that I came back into, it's almost one of those things that I didn't even realize everything else I had done was preparing me for this role. I was, I would say, a little apprehensive when I was asked to come back here to do this role. I almost felt, and just being transparent, vulnerable,
Sure.
I almost felt it was too big for me.
Wow.
I, wasn't sure that I had the skill set to do it.
But we could go down that rabbit hole on imposter syndrome, and especially women in industry like supply chain manufacturing. Is chances are you are totally qualified for it, but
That's a great
because
call
you
out,
didn't
Allison.
feel like you hit every single check mark on that list, you felt you weren't good enough or weren't qualified, and that's a tough one. It's real.
It is, and it took me a lot of time to make the decision, which, usually I'm ready to go because I like change. I like, doing different things. And I really had to like sit back, talk to different people, really figured it out. And it's probably, again, one of the best decisions I made, in this role. And let me tell you what I do. It's called supply chain integration. So I say that I'm like the liaison between the business and IT. And when I say the business, that's our whole demand side. So that's our demand planners, our order fulfillment team, our warehousing team, our transportation team. Anything that they need from a systems process, and then having the people to support those systems and processes is basically my job. Like I do the project management for those activities. I do work on a couple of projects on our supply side. So then our supply side is like the plants, the manufacturers. I work on a few projects for them, but really I would say my area of expertise is our, demand side. So I'm using the knowledge that I've had from being on that side of the business for so long, and then bringing into it like my negotiation skills, my relationship building skills, my communication skills, and then being able to communicate with our IT department, which IT is a whole nother, they speak a different language. That's a different, and I don't mean a different language like, English, Spanish. I mean a different language
like a smart language, like intelligence. It's like, and not taking, and I say that not taking anything away from our supply chain community, but which is brilliant as well. But gosh, you're kind of like the bridge between, if I had to generalize, kind of the operational language with the technology and IT language, and that gets lost in translation on an hourly basis. So to have bridge builders like yourself that also have been there and done it, given your your journey, that is incredibly invaluable.
Yeah, and something you just said made me think of something. Is so our sales team, they always say, "Oh, supply chain, y'all are the brains behind everything." Y'all look like brains behind everything. Y'all make it happen. We'll just tell you what you want, what we want, and tell you what we need, and y'all make it happen. So, I think it's good that other functions in the organization see the value in supply chain, especially when, of course,
So
all companies are there for profit. So supply chain is not like making the money, but
right.
we are basically the ones that save the money.
So I agree with that, and I also kind of disagree with that, especially as industry has evolved and how supply chains become that competitive advantage. Because to your point, it makes it happen, and it enables returns and set it on your porch. Reverse logistics, right? That final mile, which has become incredibly more complex. I would argue, while I agree with you, it saves the money, it also is making some money because it drives sales.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? The other thing that you shared there, and we're gonna want to get to kind of the cultural side of your organization that enables it to perform at the incredible level it does, and to put incredible people like yourself in big leadership roles. But supply chain does make it happen, and I love what you said there. That's been a mantra of mine for probably 20 years. And having spent some time in the military, I think one of the reasons why supply chain manufacturing, end-to-end supply chain, because that really encompasses everything, is people that rally around a mission to make it happen, right? It's not, they get it. Yeah. And it's something inherent baked into global supply chain. And to your point, that's what it's like, a magnet for me. I don't know about you, Allison, but it really, for a long time, it's been something that's just grounded who I am and why this industry appeals to me so much.
Yep. It's as if the supply chain's the maestro of the symphony, so to speak. And ultimately, if it's off, then everybody's off. So
they even have to bring the tuba sometimes, Allison and LeAnne. So.
You don't want me playing an instrument or singing. So there's that.
There's a sense of humility at times, often in supply chain as well, where I agree with you. It's like, it's the maestro, but it's also someone that doesn't mind washing the dishes from time to time, or bringing the tuba, or taking the kids up, whatever it is, right? Whatever analogy you want to use. But anyway, LeAnne, there's so much. I wish we had 3 more hours to dive into your journey, especially on the demand planning side, which is such an important element to, it always has been, but it has gotten more important here in these recent years. But for the sake of moving us right along, I do want to talk about the culture at your organization. Is there anything else you want to share before I move to that question?
No, let's move on. Let's talk culture.
Okay. All right. So Gartner, which everybody and their brother and sister knows, ranked your organization number 2 on its annual list of top 25 supply chain companies, right? And they're regularly at the top. So when it comes to culture at your organization, right, a global CPG, what aspect or two do you believe helps to fuel supply chain performance in particular?
I think the first thing is we look for agile solutions to our issues. We try to stay current on what's happening out in the industry, and when we can, be a leader out there. We've adapted a test and learn philosophy, progress over perfection. We move forward.
Progress over perfection. I like that. Progress over perfection. I think we have our title, Allison.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And then, people are empowered to make decisions. We're a corporation. Of course, you do have to go through some red tape, but our people are empowered to make a decision and make decisions quickly and not be afraid to fail, which goes back to the progress over perfection. And that's encouraged and enhanced and embraced throughout the organization. And, that's really what we have to live on to move forward. And like you said, to consistently be ranked, where we are,
right,
with Gartner and, other organizations. So.
Yes. Well, every once in a while we'll talk culture with someone, and it's palpable as they describe it. And that's what I feel with you, LeAnne, as you describe different elements of that culture, of that enabling culture that allows for world-class performance. And you know, Allison, I'll get your favorite part of what she described there. For me, it is empowering decision making. You know, I don't know about y'all, but I've worked at an organization one time in my journey that wanted to get 7 signatures on a $25 spend. And that stymies everything. And it's not fun to work in those types of environments and cultures. But Allison, how she described her organization and its culture, what did you pick up on?
I think that progress over perfection for sure. I think what that speaks to is authenticity. So it allows the people's meaning and their own passions to kind of shine through. And ultimately, you know, your customers, they're going to see right through things.
Right.
And if they can tell that the people that they're working with or the products that they're receiving, you know, if it comes from something real and something they can relate to, then all the better.
Well said. Love that. Okay. So much more to talk. So much to talk about, LeAnne. So little time. Let's talk about. So all three of us are consumers, probably more so than we were at this time last year. Maybe, I don't know. So we're all customers of a wide variety of organizations, and of course, a lot of retailers. LeAnne, I'd love to get your take. What's one thing you've been tracking, especially when it comes to the retail experience or the consumer experience these days, where it's like a business school study every hour of the day?
So it has to be e-commerce. E-commerce has made such a difference in our business, and not only talking about like the Amazons and the Chewy Foods, but talking about traditional brick and mortar retailers that now we have to put an e-commerce strategy against. So it's intriguing to look at it from the customer, what we call the consumer's perspective.
Right.
And then in our, as a supplier, look at it from the customer's perspective, and then make sure as the supplier, we are, meeting the requirements of our customers, because it's a whole different world. And when you talk about having to be agile, that final mile to the shelf, that final mile is really quick now.
You're right.
We
you're
have
so
to
right.
turn products so quickly. We have to make sure that, so on the system side, I deal a lot with like making sure that the labeling is correct. We have the information that the customer needs so they can have our product flow through with as little touching as possible. I don't know what people envision if they've never been in a warehouse or, if they've never been in a plant, but you don't have a million people there doing things like, the olden days. Everything's, technology, machinery. We have to make sure that everything's encoded so that it comes from our system, flows through, scanned into their system. So, and it's
not 1982
more complex than people may think.
What was that, LeAnne?
I was just saying it's a lot more complex than, people may think if they've never kind of like been in that world. You just think, I order something that ends up at my door. Amazon drops it at my door, but it's a lot that goes, in between there.
And do you think that,
go ahead.
Do you think that like being in your role, and Scott, maybe this is a question for you too. Do you think, knowing what you know about supply chain, are you aware of your hyper awareness as a consumer? So do you, like, I remember when Amazon first started the whole 2-day shipping thing. And I remember one day, like a day went by and I didn't get my item and I was irritated and I was like, oh, it hasn't been 2 days. And then I really started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, really, come on. I mean, even 2 days. So do you start realizing that in the industries that we're all in? Do you notice those things?
I do. And sometimes I'm even amazed at what, like an Amazon could do. Because I'm like, wait, how could you possibly get me my package
Right.
tomorrow? Because I know what it has to go through and I know where it's sitting.
Yes.
And, so
Well, you know,
yes,
I was up really, really late and I was ordering something on Amazon last night. It was 12:40 and they were a pair of socks. It's a long story, but it was a pair of socks. And I put it in my cart and it said, same day delivery, get it by 3 a.m. I'm like, I don't need the socks
Wow.
that bad.
right.
Please do not send someone out to my house with socks at 3 o'clock in the morning.
It's unbelievable.
Somebody has to pick that off the shelves
Right.
at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right,
And
right.
Yeah.
It really is unbelievable. You know, to your question, Allison, for years, you know, stopping in a moment, whether I'm putting on deodorant or putting on socks and noticing the country of origin. And I also
Mhm.
catch myself regularly kind of thinking about the product design. Why is this extra plastic piece here or what, or packaging? Packaging is fascinating, you know, and we're dealing with so much of it because of e-commerce these days, a lot more than we ever did as kids growing up. Right. So yes, I would say, I think probably all three of us are very hyper aware. And the good news here is that consumers, even that aren't in supply chain or aren't in manufacturing, aren't in any of these, you know, related industries, they're becoming more hyper aware, and that's going to enable us to make progress over perfection on some of the challenges of our day. So that is really good news, I think, for us, all of us. Okay, I had one more question, and then Allison, I know we're gonna kind of shift gears here. One more question about planning, if I may, LeAnne. You know, 17 years, a lot of that journey with the current company was you know, demand planning was a big part of what you did. Anything when it comes to all the different data that goes into demand planning, anything that might surprise folks that you might can share without having to kill us later?
I just think that something I could share is that it's an evolution, and I've seen this evolve when you talk about data. At one time, we had a lot of data, probably too much to use it effectively. And over the past, I would say 2 years or so, we've implemented new tools and also put, like we now have a whole data analytics team that, you know, not only looks at the tools, but they go out into the company and find people that love data. And like, that's not their job, but they put them on almost like a
SWAT team,
like a SWAT team, like a catalyst team to come up with new reports, new ways to use the tool, train other people to use the tool. So we're learning how to use the data that's out there better to our advantage.
I love it. And one final comment there. I think we've talked about this before, Allison, and if you and I haven't, I know I have with about 1,000 other people, you know, we'll call it 10 years ago, maybe, when the term big data became a big thing. What LeAnne described, every organization that invested in accumulating big data kind of reached to a fork in the road where, okay, great, we got all this data that we paid so much money to accumulate, but what do we do with it? You know, that was such a critical time for so many. And then, as LeAnne describes, eventually, you know, companies figure out a very savvy way of really paring down what they really need, what are signals versus all the noise that they can make sound decisions on. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, LeAnne. I find it fascinating. Okay, so Allison, where are we going next with the one and only LeAnne Richards?
Yes. So as you can probably imagine, she does a lot of other stuff other than supply chain. So LeAnne, you know, you seem very passionate, obviously, about things, including serving others and paying it forward. So can you tell us a little bit, why is this important to you? And I believe that there's a certain acronym, RAIN, that I would love to hear more about.
Okay. So I told you about our mantra growing up. So now what I live by, like in our house, is to whom much is given, much is required. I worked hard, I have a good career. We're very comfortable, but I have experienced times in life when it was not like that for me. So, I know the needs of people that need. And one thing that's important to me in raising my child is that she understands the needs of others. She's grown up with a certain amount of privilege, and I don't want to have her go out into the world thinking that everyone, has what she has, some of the opportunities that she's had, some of the experience that she's, been able to experience. So, serving our community is very important in our house. It's, one of our foundations and fundamental things that we do. So a few years ago, I started an organization called RAIN, and RAIN stands for Realizing Excellence in Girls Now. I'm very passionate about, girls empowerment, and part of it was a little selfish on my part with RAIN because my daughter was in middle school and I was scared. I'm like, what's coming? You hear middle school stories, you hear high school stories, how can I create a community of girls that are surrounded by excellence and expect excellence in themselves and also put out excellence into the world. So RAIN is built on 5 pillars. One of them is authenticity, the word you used earlier, Allison, entrepreneurship, health and wellness, serving our community, and then college readiness. So it was really just about having girls and their parents come in and share information, share activities. We were even able to do some things through the pandemic. We did some video classes, we did some public speaking classes and things throughout the pandemic, but really just creating a space for girls to be themselves and, find their passions, follow their passions, and, grow on them. So it's been a good journey. The other part of that is I started selling stationery items that are like excellence based. So I have pencils and stickers and just things that remind girls to be excellent. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
You can be great. It's not bad to be great. So,
and that's great because it's true that you need to see those. You need to physically see those things for them to be manifest, right? I mean, they have to. If you say it loudly enough out loud, then it can happen. But that's wonderful to have that sort of, to offer those resources to young women, because I don't envy today's young girls that have social media that is constantly in the background. And I just, it was hard enough as a middle schooler.
Right.
Exactly.
Isn't that the truth? It was hard enough in 1989 without having social media follow us home, right?
Right.
Well,
peer pressure, what we thought was peer pressure is nothing what they're experiencing today.
Excellent point. Well, hey, let's make sure we include a link to RAIN in the show note. We will make sure we do that. And if folks want to support RAIN, it sounds like they could purchase stationery, but they could also get involved in the programming. Any quick advice there?
What I really love to do are the classes. So we had another class that was finding your passion and your purpose. So always looking for people to get involved, to share their gifts with girls.
Wonderful.
So
speakers.
I would love the speakers. Whatever your gift is. I'm a creative, so some of the things that I share, we've done cooking classes, and we've done some of the things. We made hot chocolate bombs last year, and cookie classes. So really, whatever your gift is, because one thing I found out, which was interesting, 2 girls, they were like, wow, we really like cooking. And one of them is like, she was in middle school then, but now her mother said that, she's thinking about going like the culinary route. Wow. So, you never know what gift that you share with someone else is going to spark, a lifelong either interest or career.
Agreed. You know, to that end, I'm going to botch this quote, but you know, Francis of Assisi, right? You know what I'm talking about? I'm sure I probably mispronounced his or her name, but hey, there's a great quote where they talk about you never know who is hearing the sermon you're preaching in any given day, and they were using that sermon as an analogy because it's whoever, you know, it's however you present yourself in that day. So to your point, you never know the epiphany that your actions and your messaging and your leadership, whatever it is, how that can impact others and awaken something in their blind spot. So I love that component of what you're doing there and beyond with Rain. So we'll have to talk more. So all right, so I got just a couple more questions for you. I don't want to keep neither one of you from what's, I'm sure, a very busy day, but a beautiful day here in the Atlanta area. I've got my window open, so if y'all hear a cardinal or a squirrel, they're having an epic battle here recent days. All right, so picture this, LeAnne. Picture this. You're addressing a room full of college students, a big old auditorium. You're at the Ritz-Carlton in New York City, big old oak panel room, you know, 1,000 people sitting there on the edge of their seat, waiting to hear your advice on how they could break in the industry and perhaps advance. What would you tell them?
So I would give them 3 tips. And I think it's applicable to any industry, any function, applicable to life. I'm going to go back to authenticity. The first thing when you walk into a room, be authentic. Bring yourself, bring your ideas to the table. Don't make yourself small. Don't take up space in the room. You know, everyone's different and your difference will make a difference. So that would be my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice I would say is foster relationships with people. And that's not just people within your functional area where you're working or, you know, your job. Build relationships with people throughout your organization, because when people trust you, they help you and you help them. You know, I mean, you never know where your paths will cross in the future. You never know what the future holds. So, and I say this mainly because I've grown up over the last 18 years in a relationship company, and I see the importance of relationships. If I go back to my first job that I told you about was my learning experience with Amico, I didn't know, people call it politics, but I don't even really like to call it politics. But I didn't know. I thought I would just have to go and do my job, do a good job, and everything's gonna be great. It's so much more than that.
Right.
You know, it's really about the relationships. And that's what I didn't know then that I know now. And the third piece of advice, I mean, this sounds cliche, but it's so true. And, you know, I tell my daughter this, and I tell anybody that, you know, young enough to start their path or change their path, or I guess it doesn't matter how old you are, do what you love. You know, do what you want to do every day, and you're not going to wake up miserable to have to do it. You know, you want to be passionate about what you want to do. You want to feel good about pouring yourself into what you do. So those are my pieces of advice.
Outstanding. Authenticity.
I love those.
I do
Those
too.
Those are great. And you know, it also reminds me of earlier when LeAnne was talking about entering into that position and not knowing if she had everything to get there. I think, LeAnne, you're helping young women and the next generation to not have that mentality, to go into it with confidence and recognize, hey, I like this. I think I can do it. I know I can do it, period. That's a really cool, that's really neat give forward that you do.
Agreed. I really think what you described there, Allison, you know, you also mentioned on the front end, that we should set up a panel to discuss that. I think that appears to be, a really big deal and a big hurdle for folks to get over. And as you said, many women especially in the industry. So I appreciate you both kind of speaking toward that. And I love those three: authenticity, relationships, and do what you love. Do what you love. Okay. So one final question, and then we're going to make sure folks know how to connect with you, LeAnne. So when it comes to real leadership, not lip service leadership, but real leadership that makes it happen in whether it's a pandemic or normal times, whatever normal times are, I've forgotten what that's like. But what's here in recent years, what's a eureka moment that you've had as it relates to leadership?
I think it's kind of something we touched on a little bit. The best leaders empower their people. People want to feel like they have the opportunity to make decisions. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. People don't want to be babysat, and I think the pandemic brought out more of people's abilities because, if you were a manager or a leader that had the propensity to micromanage, you didn't have that opportunity anymore. You had to trust your people. You had to trust that things were going to get done. And I think a lot of people have grown through the pandemic of having a little bit more autonomy to get things done. And the other thing that I don't know, I just think it's important. Maybe it's just me because I'm just like technology. Like you have to use like you can't be afraid of technology. There are so many tools out there to make your life easier. And this goes because I think everybody's a leader. I think personal leadership is as important as the person with the leadership title. But you have to use technology in order to not only advance, just to keep up. So like anybody out there that's fearful of a system or fearful of, what a system, it's not gonna, like you said, it's not going to break anything,
Right.
You have to try.
Seriously, just do it. And we had a panelist from Ace Hardware. It's been in probably about 6 months ago, but she was comparing decision-making prior to the pandemic when everybody was in the office to kind of, as we're going through the rigors and everybody's remotely. And it was a decision related to, I think, expense reports, I believe. I can't remember. And pre-pandemic, it was like, no, we're not going to change that. You're going to send all the documentation in. You're going to FedEx, whatever it is. And then in the middle of the pandemic, as you got remote, it's like, what were we thinking? We just need to do it. It's not a big deal. It makes things easier on our employees. Let's do it. So anyway, I really appreciate your message here today. Allison and LeAnne. So Allison, we got some good news that I'm going to ask you about here in a minute. But LeAnne, how can folks connect with you?
So the best way is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm out there public. Just look me up on LinkedIn. And Rain, I'll give you the link for Rain. So it's buyrain.com. And,
Bahrain, is that B-U-Y?
B-Y.
B-Y, Bahrain.
B-Y-R-E-I-G-N. Yep.
Wonderful. We'll make sure we include that link, Bahrain.com, and connect
and
with
I'll give you our Instagram as well.
All right.
So I'm all over social media. I love social media, If you do it right, it's fun.
It is. Yes. What is the Instagram?
The Instagram is by_rain.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, you've been a delight to talk with and frankly learn from. And I am so glad, going way back to the front end of our conversation, that you didn't let that hurdle and that inner question, that inner voice that we all have, keep you from being the best you. So LeAnne, you've got an inspiring journey, and thanks so much for taking an hour of it and sharing with us here today. All right. So LeAnne, you and I get to celebrate some good news that Allison has had in her company. So Allison, speaking of social media, something hit my social media the other day that WinTech, which you lead, has gotten some big news. Tell us more.
Yeah, we were very excited to announce yesterday that we were voted Best of Georgia 2021 in the aerospace manufacturing category. So that was pretty exciting.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful, especially in light of all the dynamics we're talking pre-show. It's a tough business to be in, right?
It is. It is. Lots of unknowns. And, supply chain wise, the aerospace manufacturers were feeling it too. So we're really grateful. So the Georgia Business Journal puts on these awards every year, and they're to see the other names on the list is pretty impressive. I suppose, I guess we got the small business side because the other aerospace manufacturer winner is Gulfstream.
Right.
So it's pretty awesome to be on the list with such a great company as well.
Well, that is great news. Hopefully you and the team have a chance to celebrate it in these crazy times, and congratulations. It doesn't surprise me one bit. Organizations tend to take the persona of who leads them. And so you, Wintech and Gulfstream, it makes a lot of sense to me. So congratulations.
Well, thanks. We appreciate it.
You bet. Okay. And Allison, really appreciate and enjoy these conversations we've had here today. Really appreciate you facilitating our informative, inspiring, entertaining conversation with LeAnne Richards. So LeAnne, again, thank you for your time today. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. This was great. And let's make sure, by the way, and thank you for your time, Allison. How can folks connect with you?
Definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, hey, Allison, really appreciate your time here today. LeAnne, a joy to get to know you. Listeners, hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. There's so much to unpack here. We really need to have like a bonus hour, but maybe we'll have to have LeAnne back and dive in a little deeper on some of the things that came out in our conversation. Hey, be sure to find us at supplychainnow.com. Find us wherever you get your podcast from so you don't miss conversations like this. But most importantly, folks, hey, be like LeAnne Richards. Do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time right back here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.